Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to this service of the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Grand Traverse. I'm Pam Hendrick, and I'm a member of the Sunday Services Committee. And I want to welcome those of you who are joining us via live stream, and those of you who are joining us here in our beautiful sanctuary. And for those of you here in the sanctuary, just a gentle reminder to please silence your electronic devices. And I'm just realizing I forgot to silence mine, so let's hope I get through this before I go down there and turn it off, okay? And whether you come here to seek the comfort of community with those who share our values, or to be challenged to examine your life in new ways, whether you are questioning or affirming your faith, we embrace you in all the complexity of your humanity. Do we have any visitors here today who would like to be willing to introduce yourselves? Please stand and let us know who you are.
I'm Dave Bauman.
Hi, Dave.
I'm Pam Bauman.
Hi, Pam. Another Pam.
Yeah,
That's nice. Yeah. Good.
We're newcomers. We live on the peninsula, and we're looking for a church home.
Oh, well, welcome. We're so glad to have you here. Anybody else? So please stay after the service and join us in the hospitality room. And if we have tea and coffee service today, pick a yellow mug so we can remember that you're visitors and get to know you better.
And cookies.
And we have cookies today. Yes. Yay. All right. Yeah, we'd love to get to know you, and we do welcome all to our Church of a Wide Embrace. So sharing our joys and concerns with our beloved community helps us stay connected in caring and in celebration. You can write your joy or concern in the book over there to your left, and it will be read later in the service by Reverend Alex. If you have a concern that's too tender to share, you can always speak to a member of our caring committee. And we have that person here in the beautiful yellow stole, so do find her after the service if you'd like to talk. Now today, Reverend Alex is going to talk to us about how we belong as Unitarian Universalists. But this is also September 11th, and the anniversary of that tragic day in 2001 when terrorists attacked our country, causing deaths of nearly 3,000 people, and of course the deaths are ongoing of the first responders who breathed in all of that toxic air at the sites. And when I think of a time when I had a strong sense of belonging, both spiritually and emotionally, to my UU faith, I think of the Sunday following that tragic day. So a little background, I was living in southern New Jersey at the time, and my congregation in South Jersey had a lot of birders. It's one of the premier spots in the country for fall and spring migration of birds. And in fact, on 9/11, I was out birding in the early morning before I went to work. And it was there on a beautiful, beautiful September day. It will always be ironic to me as what a beautiful day that was. But I came home and found my husband just ashen in the doorway. Well, each year our congregation held a birding B&B as a fundraiser, and the whole congregation came together to offer a weekend of hospitality and guided birding adventures to UU visitors from all across the region. In the aftermath of that horrific attack, we thought seriously about canceling our birding B&B. But after checking with the members of the congregation who were committed to it and with all of our registered guests, we decided that for our sanity's sake, we really needed to go ahead. And the 9/11 attack, as many of you remember, was on a Tuesday. And that following Friday night, we welcomed our birding guests. And we were all feeling so raw and so shaken. But it turned out to be just a beautiful, beautiful weekend where we mourned together, where we fretted together about what the potential response of our government was going to be, and where we found healing in the beautiful, beautiful birds and nature surrounding us. And at the culmination of the weekend, we all got together, birding guests and congregants, and we had an outdoor service at a South Jersey park, followed by a potluck picnic. And that weekend, it was so clear that we all needed the connection to each other. As nature lovers, as Americans, and especially as UUs. And now enjoy our prelude, Everyday People, composed by Sly and the Family Stone and performed by Barbara Young.
It is a good Sunday to be together this morning, right? Whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here this morning. I am the Reverend Alex Jensen. I use the pronouns he and him. And gathered in this group of people is a whole host of open minds and caring hearts, just waiting to welcome you here this morning. This congregation considers its role of welcoming others, especially those of you who are new to Unitarian Universalism and to our community. We really take this seriously, and we hope that you will bring your fullest self here, knowing that all of you and who you are is sacred, that you are loved just as you are this morning, even if you're grumpy or tired. Sunday mornings can sometimes be a bit rough. Even if you are weary or hurting, just yearning for a place for your soul. We bid you welcome this morning, no matter who you are, how you dress, or who you love, or even what your story is. We hope that you will find a place for yourself here with us. This morning, we are exploring the topic of belonging in further depths. From last week's service, we know that vulnerability itself is key in order to welcome others into our midst, especially those who are different from ourselves. This Sunday, we turn to how we belong together. With this great expanse and spectrum of ideas, beliefs, and commitments that each one of us as Unitarian Universalists holds, what is it that binds us together, even when we can think or believe so differently? Is the great umbrella and banner of this faith large enough for the great difference found among us in our ongoing experiment of liberal faith? The great idea and truth that the Transylvanian Unitarian clergyman, the Reverend Francis David, expressed as, "We need not think alike to love alike." As we explore how it is exactly that we belong together, I invite you to hear these words from the Reverend Gretchen Haley. There is nothing you need to bring with you to be welcome here. No right beliefs or proof of citizenship. No eternal optimism or clarity of conviction. No boundless courage or endless expertise. You do not need to know what brought you here, or how you will solve that problem that you are turning over and over and over in your mind. Your bills do not need to be paid, and your checkbook can be a mess. Your children may have been up half the night. Your hearing aids may not be working, and your knees may be creaking. You do not need to already be perfect or even halfway to belong in this circle where grace meets us where we are, but does not leave us as it found us. Where love resides in each of us, yet is somehow more than all, where life still pulses and rages and heals and transforms, creating us and this day anew once again. And so come, let us worship now together. It is our tradition each of our Sundays to acknowledge the land on which we now have gathered, to honor the many generations of those who have gone before us, but who are not forgotten. We especially honor the indigenous peoples of the Anishinaabe, who are the Ojibwe and Odawa in our region, on whose ancestral lands we now steward and continue to gather. We raise this birch bark basket, holding the 4 sacred medicines of sweetgrass, cedar, sage, and tobacco, to remind us that the Anishinaabe are still here, that our role is to be healers of the pains of historic violence, colonization, and loss. Let us remember their presence in our midst and the history of these lands on which we now gather. We also light our chalice this morning, the flaming and burning symbol of Unitarian Universalism that remains an enduring signal of hope and possibility, even in the hardest of times. Ollie will now be lighting our chalice as we light our chalice with so many other communities and congregations all across the country and even world this morning as we gather. Thank you, Ollie. And I will now read our chalice lighting words for us. May the flame we now kindle light the path back to our center, back to that place of belonging to what is true, what is deepest within, what knows us even before we know ourselves. And may our chalice remind us that we are held and welcomed whole, without the need to hide a single piece or part of who we are. We will now sound our singing bowl, calling us into this sacred time together. I invite you to let all of your anxieties and fears wash away, all of the thoughts and distractions that are keeping you from being here with us now, as we listen to this sound as it dissipates into the silence. Please rise in body or in spirit as we join in singing our opening hymn, number 404, found in your gray hymnals, What Gift Can We Bring? The lyrics will also be up here on the screen, and they're also, I believe, in your order of service, and we will be joined by some select folks from our vocal ensemble to help lead our singing together. So come, let us rise if we're willing and able.
We Unitarian Universalists are self-governing and self-sustaining, and in keeping with our fifth principle, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process, we get to vote on who our minister and our congregational leaders will be. And I know I've said it before and I'll say it again, we are also solely responsible for the stewardship of our congregation. No parent organization sends us funds or clergy. Our existence and our presence as a force of good in our community rely on our covenant to contribute what we can of our resources and our talents. So as we pass the baskets here in the sanctuary, please be aware that our baskets have two sides, one for sustaining our congregation and one for those in need in our greater community. And for those of you who are joining us remotely, here are the ways you can express your very much appreciated generosity. You can mail a check to the congregation. You can visit the UUCGT website. You can use your phone by downloading the Venco mobile app. And any one of these methods will give you the option of designating your gift for the congregation or for those in need or for fulfilling your annual pledge. May our offerings sustain and grow the mission and life of this congregation, and may we give in love and hope. And now is a time for meditation as we listen to Bring Many Names by Nancy Dorian and Nicolaus Herman, performed by Barbara Young.
It is our practice as a congregation and a spiritual community to set aside time within our service to name and honor the joys and concerns shared on our hearts, these moments and milestones of each of our lived experiences. I will be sharing some of those that have been lifted up for us to hold on our hearts in our service today. If you have one that you have not yet shared or feels a bit too tender or sensitive to share with anybody just yet, you're welcome to reach out to myself, to one of our congregational care team members. Barb is wearing the lovely multicolored stole. You can look out for her. Or simply hold it on your heart as you are held in the love of this community. None of us is ever meant to travel life's journey alone. And so here is what has been offered up for us to hold on our hearts this morning. We have a candle from Jan Zerbel. Much gratitude for messages of support all week. My son starts immunotherapy soon, and we are encouraged. I have an anonymous candle here. Joy of how my UU community came through with support and love as I said goodbye to my last family member this August. And another candle. Concern for Salman Rushdie, not a 9/11 victim, but a victim of the same terroristic movement. Dr. Rushdie is expected to survive, but with permanent nerve damage. We light a candle for Anne Sweeney. Good PR in most recent ticker about our church hosting the Braver Angels event last year. Just a candle for all of those endeavoring to speak across difference and move toward a place of further wholeness. Bless you. We light a candle for Beth Strawbridge. Today, I remember my youngest brother, Charlie Smith, who celebrated his 61st birthday on September 11th in 2018 and died suddenly 11 days later. Today is a day for celebrating the birthdays of 3 loved ones, as well as a day of reflection. And so we light this candle. We also light a candle from Max Oldbear and Candace Lee. After a long, stressful spring and summer, Max Oldbear was finally eligible for hip replacement surgery, which has been successful. He is now at Candace's and under some cardiac supervision, and he has very much appreciated the use of the walker, which was donated by the church by a nameless UU. Thank you for that. And now, we light one final candle for all of those joys and concerns that remain on our hearts, but are nevertheless remembered and not forgotten. Dear ones, let us breathe deeply as we do each week and join in a spirit of contemplation or prayer. However it is that you hold your intentions and connect with that sense of something that is larger than yourself. Let us breathe deeply, taking a deep breath in and out. Another deep breath in and out. In this Sunday of belonging, this service, where we come yet again to be together, We know some of the pains we carry on our hearts this day, and also the pains of the past few weeks. On this anniversary of the September 11th attacks of over 2 decades ago, we hold all of those on our hearts who are and have been affected by these losses. For those who lost their lives that day, for those who lost families and loved ones as they continue to mourn and grieve them even now. For those who were subjected to great violence and hate at the hands of bigotry and prejudice. For the rise of Islamophobia and the fear of our own neighbors. We hold also the great loss of Queen Elizabeth II this past week after living a glorious life of service with a reign of over 70 years. A remarkable person and woman who continues to inspire us even in death, even in the midst of complicated feelings we may have about her loss. We also cry out in both sorrow and joy at the joys and concerns that we have shared on our hearts with this community. For those we are mourning and thinking of this day who are no longer with us. For those we are sending intentions of healing and care. We hold all of these things and hope that this practice of joining our hearts as one may call us to remember time and time again that we are never truly alone, that there remains here a community of love and care, ready and willing to love each of us home. May it be so, and amen. Pam will now share with you this morning's reading.
Our reading this morning is a reflection written by retired UU minister Reverend Marilyn Sewell at the 50th anniversary of the 1961 merger of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America. She reflects on the many benefits and also the many challenges that Universalists and Unitarians had as they merged their movements. So why Unitarians and Universalists belong together, a 50-year recollection. A dramatic moment unfolded on May 23, 1960, for Unitarians and Universalists, two small liberal denominations that had considered a merger for at least 100 years. Simultaneous sessions of both denominations met in adjoining rooms in John Hancock Hall in Boston. And the last formal act for consolidation took place on May 12, 1961, at the first annual meeting of the Unitarian Universalist Association in Boston, when the Constitution and bylaws were ratified. So why had these two small struggling denominations failed to join before this time? Do they really belong together? Some Universalists, who were ever more pious than Unitarians, would still say no. And many Unitarians have little understanding of what the Universalists brought to the Union, and so do precisely what the Universalists fear. They disregard the Universalist heritage, referring to the denomination simply as Unitarian. The main problem with the merger always lay with the Universalists. They were the smaller of the two groups with fewer resources and less stability. Both groups emerged about the same time in this country at the end of the 18th century, and both had roots in England, but the Unitarians came from upper middle class stock, and the Universalists tended to be from rural areas and were less well-educated. Their worship styles were different too. The Unitarians tending towards the cool intellectual, while the Universalists were warm and emotive. Nevertheless, the two groups had much in common. Most significantly, each was a free faith with no creed, and both had a strong policy of congregational autonomy. They were compatible theologically, though each had a different emphasis. Both groups allowed the umbrella of their religion to encompass an increasingly diverse range of beliefs, including atheists, agnostics, humanists, Jews, as well as Christians. And by the time of their consolidation, the class differences were more historical and perceptual than otherwise, especially in urban settings. And so today we are Unitarian with a strong emphasis on reason and learning. Our congregants tend to be highly educated and we love ideas, but we are not satisfied to rest there. We are also Universalists, wanting to explore emotional and spiritual depths, wanting to be whole persons, generous and loving and ever more inclusive. Considering population growth, we're not much bigger than we were 50 years ago. For only 0.3% of American adults identify as Unitarian Universalists. But we are influential far beyond our numbers because we are found at the edge of change wherever change is needed. We are informed, we are passionate, heartfelt people. We are Unitarian Universalists, and we belong together.
So before launching into my sermon this morning, I thought that I would start with a few jokes. Some real good, cheesy Unitarian Universalist jokes. Are you up for hearing them? Here we go. Don't say I didn't warn you. Why did the Unitarian Universalist cross the road? To support the chicken on its own search for truth and meaning. Don't worry, I have a couple more. Many prayers begin with addressing God or a supreme deity. So what does a Unitarian Universalist prayer begin with? It begins with, "To whom it may concern." All right, here's a more complex one. How many Unitarians does it take to change a light bulb? Any guesses? One? All of them? The answer is, we choose not to make a statement either in favor of or against the need for a light bulb. However, if in your own journey you have found that light bulbs work for you, that is just wonderful. You are invited to write a poem or compose a modern dance about your personal relationship with your light bulb, and you're invited to present it next month at our annual Light Bulb Sunday service, in which we will explore a number of light bulb traditions, including incandescent, fluorescent, three-way, long life, and tinted, all of which are equally valid paths to luminescence. Have you had enough? Or you want one more? You want one more? So a traveler couldn't find the local Unitarian Universalist church. And after looking in the center of the town, in the suburbs, and all around the surrounding countryside, the traveler asked a farmer, "Am I too far out for the UU church?" The farmer replied, "Nobody's too far out for them." All right, I'm done, and I probably should stick with my job as a minister before doing any more jokes or stand-up or anything like that. But as cheesy as these jokes are, they actually make us laugh because they point to some funny trends and things that we share as Unitarian Universalists. a respect for the role of individuals and committees, especially in respecting light bulbs and all the ways and paths to luminescence, the great depths to which we hold to the free and responsible search for truth and meaning found throughout our lives, the different and diverse ways that we all believe about things like God, the universe, the afterlife, and all those other big questions, how we as Unitarian Universalists love to laugh at ourselves, how complicated and messy, and yes, sometimes even funny, this whole experiment is in forming congregations and communities of peoples who come from so many different passions, thoughts, and beliefs. And let's just name it, we laugh too at how heady we can sometimes be about it all, thinking so deeply about what we value and how to align our lives also with our words. One of the reasons that we laugh at these jokes is that we know that there are, in fact, some things that we have in common, despite all the things that one might see on the surface. While we all believe and think differently about so many different things, there is a core of our identity that we know and that we can even relish and take laughter in. The very fact that we even have Unitarian Universalist jokes out there is proof that we actually do have something in common. Though, knowing us, I think we'll need to leave it up to the board or one of its subcommittees to decide what exactly that something is. And we'll just have to get back to you on that one. The report will be at our next annual meeting. So stay tuned for that. But all joking aside, our theme this morning is exploring how it is that we belong together, especially with all of the different ways that we are so different. Last Sunday, we explored what it means to belong through having courage to be vulnerable with one another to the point where we can even be vulnerable with newcomers and folks who are just incredibly different than ourselves. This Sunday, our focus is a bit more inward. How in the heck is it possible that so many people of so many different backgrounds and beliefs can somehow decide to get together once a week in one single congregation? Just marvel at that for a bit. How do our services not erupt in discord or disagreements with so many varying ideas and perspectives? And what is it ultimately that binds us together, that brings us under the same Unitarian Universalist banner, even though we begin in so many different places? And is this UU banner itself large enough to encompass the spectrum of what it is that we do here and believe? Well, spoiler alert, I do think that there is much that brings us together as a people beyond just cheesy jokes and one-liners. I think that there is something deeper that we aspire toward in joining up with one another each week in this community, in making the conscious decision to link up our lives with one another to share in life's journey. And while we may seemingly think, feel, and believe so differently about all sorts of different things, I really don't think that we are that different from one another after all. To illustrate this, I want to mention a conversation that I actually had with Betsy, our Director of Religious Education here, this past week about what Unitarian Universalists believe. At the forefront of our conversation, we discussed whether Unitarian Universalists can really believe anything that they want, a common conception that people have about the vastness and breadth of our faith. And as we were talking, Betsy said something quite profound about what it is that brings us Unitarian Universalists together. In her view, Unitarian Universalists can and do believe so many different sorts of things about life's bigger questions, about God, the mystery of life, and what happens to us when we die. Though, she mentioned, you can't be a Unitarian Universalist if you don't agree about some of the more important parts of this faith. You can't be a UU, or you won't be much of a good one, if you cling to prejudiced or oppressive views of others. If you in any way believe that someone else is somehow inferior or anything lesser than human. You can't be a UU if you can't tolerate big questions or critically examining what it is that you believe and why. Another common joke about us UUs is that you come in the door with questions and then you leave the door with even more questions than when you came in here. You can't actually be a UU if you absolutely and fundamentally believe that there is only one path or spiritual truth out there to make meaning of life and our way of understanding it. If you cling to just one set of beliefs, dogmas, or creeds, and you shut out the possibilities and offerings of other traditions that are different from your own, I'm sorry, but you're in effect not a Unitarian Universalist. And I say this not from a place of gatekeeping or alluding that there is a sort of creed or litmus test for Unitarian Universalists. Practically speaking, as wide and welcoming as our embrace is, there are some things that are just simply non-negotiable for us as a people. Those non-negotiables are the inherent worth and dignity of each person, no matter who you are, the rigor of critical thinking about ourselves and our beliefs, and the bounty of the world's traditions that each holds a piece of the cosmic puzzle about how we might understand these wild and wondrous lives of ours. So no, you can't be a Unitarian Universalist and believe anything you want. You can believe in a lot of different things. But there are some fundamental things that bring us and bind us together as both a tradition and a faith. Our reading this morning that Pam read for us makes the case for why it is that Universalists and Unitarians themselves belong together, even with the historic differences that each of these traditions held. As the Reverend Dr. Marilyn Sewell writes, a retired UU minister from the First Unitarian Church in Portland, Oregon, why had these two small struggling denominations failed to join before this time? Do they really belong together? Both groups emerged about the same time in this country, and both had roots in England, but the Unitarians came from upper middle class stock, and the Universalists tended to be from rural areas and were less educated. Their worship styles were different, the Unitarians tending toward the cool and intellectual, while the Universalists were warm and emotive. Nevertheless, Sewell writes, the two groups had much in common. Both groups allowed the umbrella of their religion to encompass an increasingly diverse range of beliefs, including atheists, agnostics, humanists, Jews, as well as Christians. And so today we are Unitarian, with a strong emphasis on reason and learning, but we are not satisfied to rest there. We are also Universalists, wanting to explore emotional and spiritual depths, wanting to be whole persons, generous and loving and ever more inclusive. We're not much bigger than we were 50 years ago, but we are influential far beyond our numbers because we are found at the edge of change wherever change is needed. We are informed and we are passionate, heartful people. We are Unitarian Universalists and we belong together. What Sewell points to is the hard truths about our past. This merger that happened now over 60 years ago held many challenges from two groups that seemed rather incompatible, one from humble, modest means rather than wealth and education, the other that placed a strong emphasis on logic and reason over the whims and desires and emotions of the heart. Though what these groups could in fact agree on are the legacies that we actually now have today. That no human being is without the love of God, the imbued dignity and worth within every human heart simply by virtue of being born human. That no single one of us has a monopoly on truth or even those organized religions that we subscribe to from time to time. That wholeness itself includes not just challenging the mind, but also tending to and inspiring the heart. We actually know these pieces in ourselves today because of the roots that we have from our Unitarian and Universalist forebears. More importantly, though, Universalists and Unitarians agreed that no matter what any one of us believes about the greater questions of life, we believe that there is no such thing as divine guarantees. What this means is that we ourselves, as human beings, must be the ones to act and make change in this life. If we truly want to see an end to injustice, to prejudice and strife, we're the ones that have to do something about it. We can't just leave it up to God or to chance to solve these issues facing us. As Sewell puts it, we are found at the edge of change wherever change is needed. We are informed and we are passionate, heartful people. We are Unitarian Universalists. So how do we belong and find belonging here despite all of the things that we believe so differently? Our Time for All Ages story, The Day You Begin, wraps us all up nicely. We belong here because here we have found a place for ourselves. We belong here because there simply is no other place where we have ever belonged before. And this is it. This is our home now. As the author Jacqueline Woodson writes, there will be times in your life when you walk into a room and no one there is quite like you. Maybe it'll be your skin, your clothes, the curl of your hair. There will be times when the words don't come. There will be times when you walk into the room and no one there is quite like you until the day that you begin to share your stories. This is the day you begin to find the places inside your laughter and your lunches, your looks, your travel, and your stories, where every new friend has something a little like you and something else so fabulously not quite like you at all. So we gather as Unitarian Universalists because we are not all the same, because we all don't think the same way. And by creating a spiritual community like ours, we create a place where others and even ourselves are surprised to find that we have belonged this whole time. And all that mattered was that we shared our stories and endeavored to dwell together in love, despite what makes us so different. That is the great truth behind Francis David's words, "We need not think alike to love alike." So to close, I invite you to embrace this broad, clunky faith of ours, to embrace the questions to more questions, the messiness of committees and human communities, the joys of self-discovery when we broaden our minds, but we also push the boundaries of our own hearts. I welcome you to laugh, too, to take joy in the odd, quirky things that make us UUs, the things that bring us time and time again back to one another, even when we deeply and utterly disagree. And above all, I want you to remember the story of our roots, of the Unitarians and Universalists, who once wondered too about whether they belonged anywhere, especially here, together. Ours is a story and a heritage of coloring outside of the lines, of thinking and believing outside of the box, of being a people so different that only the umbrella of this wider faith seems to get at what brings us actually together. And in the words of an earlier punchline, nobody is too far out for us. No matter who you are or where you are on the journey of life, you are welcome and you belong right here. Go in peace all. May it be so, and amen. Let's rise now in body or in spirit and joining in singing our closing hymn, number 1051 in your teal hymnals. The title is We Are. The lyrics will also be available on the screen, and we're joined again by some of our folks from the vocal ensemble who will lead us in singing.
And those of you who follow music, there's several repeats in there, but if you follow what's on the screen, hopefully will guide you, and Barb will lead as well.
We are
So in the spirit of belonging, I thought it would be nice to join together in reciting the words for extinguishing our chalice. We haven't done this in a long time. So please join me. I hope the words are printed in your order of service together. And we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
In the spirit of covenant, community, and commitment, and in the greater spirit of belonging and knowing deeply in ourselves that yes, we do belong right here, may we be made ready to serve one another and to create the world that we so desperately dream of. Go in peace, may it be so, and amen. So again, as is tradition here, I have a couple of short things to tell you before you leave. An important announcement about the Braver Angels video that was mentioned in our time of joys and concerns as well. It will actually be airing next Sunday, though we don't want you to miss church to be able to see that on CBS. So if you would, you'll see some more information in the flash this week, we believe, about this Braver Angels documentary. We, as the UU congregation of Grand Traverse, were actually, some of our folks were interviewed for this project. And so if you'd like to see it, the video should be made available sometime in the week after next Sunday. So just a note about that to encourage some more of that great PR going around and let you know that this project is happening, and you can read some more about it. Following our service this morning, you're also invited to stay for a short presentation on Safe Harbor and our congregation's involvement for those in need. This year, our congregation is actually signed up to staff a whole week at Safe Harbor in the kitchen from Sunday, November 5th through Saturday, November 12th coming up. So for those of you that are actually looking for ways to be more involved or who have a passion for service and social justice, I really invite you to join us for a few minutes as Betsy Wacker presents on Safe Harbor today. There will also be an opportunity to learn more about Safe Harbor in the next few weeks for those of you that aren't with us today during our time of fellowship in the social hall. Just be on the lookout for Betsy, for Katie, or Rich, who could always tell you more. Or maybe even just talk to somebody else who has done this experience before. I think many of us can say it's a really rewarding experience. For those of you that have already been involved quite a bit with Safe Harbor, or you would just simply like this time to enjoy fellowship with some friends, we invite you to go ahead and just visit with folks outside while we do this presentation here in our sanctuary as we begin our presentation. So there ends my litany of announcements for you. Thank you for being here with us today. You are so, so, so loved so deeply. Go in peace, every one of you. Grow in love. Thank you for your help today. Wow. I was just...